May 15, 1943. The New Guinea jumble choked the air, thick and steaming. The afternoon sun fought through the dense canopy, casting shattered fragments of gold onto the muddy trail below. Sergeant James Whitehorse of the United States Army didn't move. Crouched low, his fingertips hovered mere inches above an almost invisible depression in the wet earth. To the 5 soldiers frozen behind him, it was nothing, just another rain-slick dent in a world of mud. They were bone-tired, convinced this patrol would end like the 17 before it, a long, empty trudge back to base, no closer to finding the enemy supply depot that ghosted somewhere in these endless, green mountains. Before we uncover how this single moment changed everything, make sure you're subscribed to the channel. It fuels our mission to bring you these hidden stories. Drop a comment below and tell me where you're watching from. It genuinely makes a difference. What none of those weary men could have guessed was that this Apache tracker's read of a single, wrong-facing footprint was about to crack a deception so flawless it had fooled Allied spy planes, ground patrols, and local scouts for 4 months. It would lead them to one of the Pacific's most brilliantly hidden bases, a secret buried not just in the earth, but in a lie. James Whitehorse had been in the Southwest Pacific for only 6 weeks. He was one of 14 Native Americans specifically recruited not for their skill with a rifle, but with the land. The son of an Arizona rancher from the Fort Apache Reservation, his childhood was spent learning to read the earth like a language. His grandfather, a man known as he who sees what others miss, taught him that everything leaves a story, a bent blade of grass, a shifted stone, a subtle tension in the soil. The Pacific War had become a brutal game of hide and seek. The Japanese were masters of the vanish, turning jungle into illusion. Here in New Guinea, Allied intelligence was certain a major supply depot was hidden in the Finisterre Range. 23 patrols had swept a 20-square-mile area and found nothing. Zip. Nada. Captain Richard Morrison, standing behind Whitehorse, wiped sweat from his brow. A West Point man, he'd led 9 of those dead-end patrols himself. His training hadn't covered an enemy that dissolved into the rainforest. He watched the sergeant with a simmering mix of hope and blunt skepticism. Whitehorse stayed statue still for 2 full minutes, his eyes tracing an invisible pattern. Then he stood, turning to Morrison with a look that was both dead certain and faintly amused. "What VE you got, Sergeant?" Morrison asked. "Someone walked backward through here, Captain," Whitehorse said, his voice low. "Tried to step in their own tracks to hide their numbers. But they messed up. Just once." Morrison's pulse kicked. "What kind of mistake?" Whitehorse knelt again, guiding Morrison's gaze to the depression. "When you walk normal, your heel strikes hardest. When you walk backward, aiming your foot, your toe presses deepest. This print has toe-first weight, but it's pointed away from the mountains. Toward us." Private Tommy Chen, the unit's city-bred interpreter from San Francisco, crept closer. The logic seemed like magic. "You sure it's not just a funny walk?" Whitehorse didn't argue. He simply pointed, 6 more prints over 30 yards, each with the same telltale reversal. "No one walks like this naturally, Private. It's staged. Someone's screaming that traffic goes out of these mountains because they're desperate to hide what's coming in." A radio call later, and reinforcements were scrambling to their position. While they waited, Whitehorse found more ghosts, plants trimmed to create hidden sightlines, a trail carefully made to look abandoned. This wasn't just hiding. It was active, artistic deception. Led by the Apache scout, the enlarged patrol followed the backward trail into impossible terrain. The jungle fought them. So did the doubt. But Whitehorse kept finding the story, a misplaced ammo crate for 75mm anti-aircraft shells, weapons no one thought were here, a redirected stream, and finally, a wild garden. Rows of edible plants, meticulously disguised with vines and dead leaves to look like random jungle growth. They were close. So close they didn't see the trap until Sergeant Drake screamed, falling into an old, forgotten pit of sharpened bamboo. As medics pulled him out, Whitehorse made a chilling observation: "This trap is months old. It's overgrown. They're not maintaining it." He looked at Morrison, the truth dawning. "They've been safe so long, they've gotten comfortable." Morrison made a gutsy call. He'd take the wounded back to link up with the main reinforcement. Whitehorse would push ahead with a tiny, 5-man recon team. It was a risk, but the sergeant moved like a shadow. And that's how, as evening bled into the sky, Private O'Brien spotted it, a heat shimmer above some rocks. Not from the sun, from ventilated air. They found the shaft, then 4 more. A hidden hillside breathing. The main force surrounded the area under cover of darkness. At dawn, they watched, stunned, as a section of the hillside, a masterpiece of camouflage netting and earth, swung open on silent hinges. Japanese soldiers emerged, stretching. Civilians filed out to forage, their faces drawn with captive exhaustion. The surrender demand boomed from loudspeakers. After a tense silence, Lieutenant Teisha Yamamoto emerged to negotiate. His priority? The safe release of the 14 impressed civilian workers. Terms were struck. What unfolded next rewrote the intelligence maps. Not 40, but 97 Japanese personnel filed out. Inside the mountain was a subterranean fortress, over 400 feet of tunnel carved into rock, stocked with enough supplies for a regiment for half a year, complete with a powerful radio room and, most precious, detailed maps of other hidden networks. In Yamamoto's captured journal, an entry from February 9th laid it bare: the backward footprint technique, taught by a sergeant from China, had worked perfectly until someone trained to read the impossible arrived. Whitehorse was awarded the Silver Star, though the ceremony sat awkwardly on his shoulders. When a reporter asked how he'd done it, he fumbled, then found the core truth: "My grandfather taught me that deception is itself a kind of truth. It shows you what someone wants to hide by the lengths they go to hide it." The facility's discovery led to 6 more hidden depots being uncovered. Tactical manuals were rewritten. The military began actively recruiting trackers and valuing traditional knowledge in a new way. James Whitehorse went home to Arizona in 1946, back to the quiet life of a rancher. But in a 1968 interview, he offered a final, profound insight. Asked if that one backward footprint might have just been a lucky find, he shook his head. "In tracking," he said, "there is no luck. Only cause and effect. Every mark is a choice. Their choice was to deceive. My training was to see. No deception is ever perfect. The earth always whispers the truth. You just have to know how to listen." Made it to the end? This story proves that sometimes the oldest skills win the newest wars. What part shocked you the most? Let's discuss in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more untold stories from the trenches of history, and for another mission behind enemy lines, check out the video on screen now.